Hello, thanks for watching a Doorgaans Verkeerd road trip from the northwest of England to the east of the Netherlands. In case you're wondering what Doorgaans Verkeerd means, it's a nod to the Dutch road sign Doorgaan Verkeer, through traffic. However, Doorgaans Verkeerd means usually mistaken, so make no mistake about that, as we're traveling through.
Thanks Ryan, for what sounded to me like a decent attempt at Dutch and a reasonable attempt at explaining a joke. Well, a pun at least. Explaining a foreign pun must surely give everyone a giggle. Not. And it looks like we are behind a cyclist. I realize there's traffic coming our way and there's a solid line in the middle of the road, but come on. This could have gone a bit quicker, even if it was just for shits and giggles. Safe overtakes make for such boring video. It's not like this motorbike takes up a lot of space and it isn't going very fast. We're just being goody-goody two-shoes. It won't impress anyone. Alright. Apart maybe from that Liverpudlian lecturer of traffic laws, Ashley Neal. We're not near Liverpool, so let's gun it.
Nobody is going to be gunning it anywhere. Our method of travel is a Piaggio medley as per usual, so we're at a tranquil pace of 60 miles per hour maximum, probably 40 or so on roads like these. We're traveling across 3 days to get to the Netherlands by the back roads. This means we'll mostly hear howling wind, and we will go along bumpy roads. This was filmed in November 2022, so you might be subject to cold, rain and fog too. A YouTube video cannot possibly convey what that feels like. If you want to know and you don't have a motorcycle license, perhaps ask some frenemies to drag you feet first down the frozen aisle in Asda, while spraying you with gobfuls of cold water. Perhaps the main difference is that we're travelling through some nice areas between Manchester and Gelderland, and that Asda radio isn't making our ears bleed. While you can look at the scenery and the road, allow us to tell you some interesting things about the country we're travelling through. Over to you, Claudia.
Over to me, Claudia. Over to me? Christ. Could you try to sound a little less patronizing, please? I know you and I were both hired because we've got such lovely faces for radio. I meant voices. Voices for radio. But you looking down your nose at me and staring at my name tag is just not on. Keep your eyes on the road, pal.
Tell you what, Claudia. Why don't you go make us both a lovely cup of tea while I frantically hold the mute button of your microphone to spare our audience from you throwing some insults my way. Please, stop. No, I wasn't suggesting you throw anything my way. I'm sorry. Apologies for the misunderstanding. Let me just talk about this area we are in and then I'll make you a nice brew, alright? Please. We've started off in Over Alderley, near Alderley Edge. The leafy road belies the fact that this is an industrial heartland. Copper has been mined here until the 1920s, with records of it dating back to the 1600s, and further evidence found from Roman times and the Bronze Age. Walk in the woodlands around here and you'll soon see it, as you're routed around unsafe ground looked after by the local caving club. The actual edge is a cliff that offers spectacular views over Manchester. Since mining stopped around the 1920s, arguably football has taken over this leafy suburban town. Alderley Edge is now where you'll find ostentatious houses and cars, owned by people that earn the national minimum wage in a week or less by playing football for Manchester City or United. Of course, the city Manchester is famous for its working-class roots and style as opposed to the bankers of London and merchants of Liverpool. Therefore, the less said about how stupendous wealth makes a mockery of working-class sports, the better. Perhaps one day an oil baron or an over-leveraged American venture capitalist will follow the footsteps of George Orwell to Wigan, PA, and realize what Friedrich Engels wrote about in the 1850s hasn't disappeared, before telling the people in the stands, let them eat cake. Until then, let's continue to travel over potholed roads passing by squeezed farmers and minimum wage workers for whom employers get a subsidy, and forget all about it when two tribes go to war for 90 minutes. As we were close to Macclesfield, now onto the high moors towards Derbyshire, it's worth noting this was the birthplace in 1864 of Sir Arthur Smith Woodward. A very clever man with a very unfortunate legacy. Fresh out of school at age 18, he moved to London to be employed by the Natural History Museum, where 10 years later, he was appointed Assistant Keeper of Geology. By age 37 he was a Fellow of the Royal Society and had established himself as the world expert on fossilized fish. Unfortunately, it all went rather wrong when he was contacted by an amateur archaeologist called Charles Dawson in 1912. Dawson claimed that skull fragments in an Sussex gravel pit showed the missing link between ape and man, and the Keeper of Geology was keen to rifle through the gravel pit spoil heaps with him to find more. Woodward reconstructed the fragments into what he believed the skull of this ancient man would have looked like, relying also on the help of Dawson and a friend, Teilhard de Chardin. When Chardin found a canine tooth that Woodward said fitted the skull perfectly, Chardin disagreed as he was sure it belonged to an ape. That friendship was over. Unfortunately for our Macclesfield man of science, by 1923 it was established that the supposed skull of the earliest Englishman was a medieval human skull with orangutan mandible and chimpanzee teeth, from which the teeth had been filed away. Nonetheless, the existence of this Piltdown man led many scientists down a cul-de-sac as more genuine fossils were ignored. With the aid of more advanced dating technologies, the hoax lost any last shred of credence by November 1953 when evidence of that was made public in Time magazine. Except, that is, in creationism and Scientology. In his 1952 book Scientology, A History of Man, L. Rob Hubbard argued that the large jaw and ground teeth of Piltdown man root man's obsession with biting and hiding our teeth and mouth in some ancient trauma, while creationists argue that the hoax shows paleontologists are dishonest. That's despite paleontologists using science to debunk Charles Dawson, a solicitor.
All right, I'll give you that. That was actually rather interesting. Or not boring, at least. Did you see how we slowed down though to let a car pass? We should have just stayed ahead of it. Locals know these roads and the dangers of it, so keeping in front of them while they loom large in the mirrors and try to squeeze past is way more fun. And it would distract from this landscape, which seems to become a little foggy as well. Oh, and there were some ponies. That's nice. They shouldn't be on fast open roads like this though. Probably neither should we. Slow means of getting anywhere ought to get nowhere, in my opinion.
I like how you pronounce neither. It's a horsey pun, isn't it? Anyway, you're just saying these things about slower means of traffic because you're a contrarian. Which makes me a protarian, I suppose. A proletarian maybe? Not sure what the opposite is. Anyway, let me go make you that cup of tea I promised. Have a look at my notes. This piece of Derbyshire is quite interesting, you'll find. Ryan out.
Thanks. Over to me, Claudia. Contrarian Claudia. And yes, I agree, you're definitely a proletarian, Ryan. Especially compared to me. You've got no idea what I got paid for this gig. But that is by the by. Let's see what useless factoids your barely legible scribbles I can find. First of all though, this is a nice bit of open road. Yes, the views across the Peak District are great, but let's take the speed up a notch. Hold on tight. Scream if you want to go faster. Yesh, now we go like stink. Much more like it. Did you see that cornering then? Not exactly knee down, but it will do. It will do just fine. Looks like Ryan has traced this route on a map, like a dork. Including all the little road names, river crossings, and junctions. Bless him. Oh well, for anyone interested in where we are, I can tell you this is Hazelbarrow Lane and we're just about to cross the A53 between Leek and Buxton. We're then crossing the River Churnet and moving on to Blackmere Road. So far, so boring. There is something special about Blackmere Road though, and it might be visible through this fog. If you keep your eyes peeled. Mind you, it might be better if we don't see much of anything. The fog is getting ever thicker. While the video is muted due to the noise of wind rushing past the helmet, you wouldn't hear much up here. It's almost deserted here, and the mist muffles anyone who even thinks of making a noise. Black Mere of course signifies a dark-colored pond, and we'll come across it shortly. It's just next to the road after we crest a hill, on the right. Legend has it that a local man called Joshua Linnett fancied a beautiful girl who spurned his advances, so he accused her of witchcraft and she ended up being drowned in this pool. It is said that with her dying breath, she cursed him. 3 days later poor innocent Wankstein in cell Joshua was found dead by the pool, with claw marks across his face. Since then, it is believed the pond is haunted by that maiden of the mere. A mermaid. There's evidence around the lake also from around 200 years ago, when others tried to dig a ditch to drain the pool and find out if it was bottomless. The mermaid told them to fuck off, or she'd get the towns of Leekfrith and Leek flooded. So thankfully they pissed off, and the lake is still here. Of course I apologize for my coarse language, but my hand is forced. Whenever I read old stories of witches and hauntings that actually turn out to be tragic tales of women who were deemed too beautiful, too clever, too wealthy or too independent and had to pay for that with their lives, I too have to curse. I curse the fact we know this Joshua Linnett's name and not hers. I fucking hate that in this country we hanged, burnt or drowned witches until as recently as 270 years ago. I hate that we gloss over that as spooky stories, when actually we're not far removed from our ancestors' superstition. We should still fear the perpetrators, far more than we should fear any lady specters wailing at us or berating us from a muddy pond on a hill. Whether we call them incels, dodgy priests, film financiers, Windsors, millionaire playboys, murder-suicide fathers or anything else doesn't matter if we can't call them fuckers, wankers and shitstains also. So hey, if there is a spirit in these hills drowned because of some Joshua Linnett who was then cursed, then fuck you Joshua Linnett. I think we just went past that pond, and I'll hand over to Ryan again. Thanks for the cup of tea, I needed it.
Yeah, you're welcome. I could hear what you were saying, and it could be argued that your cursing and political messaging has no place in a motorcycle travelogue. I didn't exactly rush back to mute your microphone though. It's good not to be silent about a shameful past, even if we are swiftly moving on. Just passing through. Nothing to see here. No, it's good to let thoughts wander a little as you traverse. We can just keep going ever forwards through places we care little about, or we can find out. And when we find injustice, even when it is consigned to legend or dismissed as something of that time, we can call it out, cursing it and standing in the way of it ever coming back. Yet as I say, we're swiftly moving on. Very swiftly, it seems. The little scooter has certainly picked up the pace since I last saw it. We are now on Blakelow Road, at the southern edge of the Peak District. To our left is the National Park. To our right, the village of Thorncliffe and the larger town of Leek beyond that. We didn't yet get very far on our trip to the Netherlands, but let's soon find a place to stop. It's time to wipe the mist from off the visor and the camera lens. To descend into the valley, towards Derby. In the next episode, perhaps to make up for some of the swearing, we'll include a destination that is simply divine.
Absolutely. But until then, this was a massive fuck you to the cheat Charles Dawson and the woman-hating Joshua something. I forgot his name already, but blessed be the maiden who was drowned at Blackmere. Playing us out is the fabulous Paul Regnett, a song called The Scene that celebrates itself. You can find him as BMX Bandit on SoundCloud. Thanks for joining us on our journey, but we'll soon be arriving at Whiteley Farm. Please don't forget your coat and your luggage, and to like and subscribe.